Next up, and I am very excited about this one to hear y'all's, at Eric Nelson 31, aforementioned, took me to the MyPillow store. He says, top 3 piece of shit cars that you or your friends owned. And this one was very exciting because I had just 3 immediately spring to mind, and then I had more spring to mind. So I have 2 honorable mentions. My friend Chanel, his 1980 something Subaru Justy, which just look up we'll post a picture of this on our Twitter. It is just like the platonic ideal of a shit car. Like when you think of just a car that sucks, it is a Subaru Justy from the mid 80s. The other shout outs, this car ran just fine, but aesthetically not the greatest. But my friend Raleigh, shout out his Volkswagen Rabbit, which just classic, 4 on the floor. Anytime you rode with him, when he shifted gears, you weren't 100% sure that the car was going to continue moving forward. It was like a lurch anytime the gears were shifted.
I had that on the way over here. That's one of my picks.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, those are my honorable mentions. Number 3, I'm going with my own here. 1978 Chevrolet Caprice Classic station wagon, my very first car.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not that this was a shitty car. It's just I was a shit driver, and the car I only had for 2 weeks because I drove it to Atlanta, which turns out I wasn't supposed to drive it any great distance. And
you had me. I wasn't supposed to drive it.
No, I mean, kind of. Yeah. Like, my dad didn't mention, like, oh, yeah, this thing is probably not going to make it a mere, hour and 45 minutes east.
Yeah.
So threw a route on the way back from Atlanta, and that was all she rode for it. But, boy, that was a fucking boat. Like, it was my dad's work car. Like, my dad was a house painter, and so we called it the paint car. And then when I turned 16, it became my car, and boy, it smelled exactly like paint. Like, it was just the worst, and it was like driving a boat, as I said. Number 2, I know he asked for either me or a friend. This is not a friend. This is just a car that was so shitty and notable. I only saw it once. I only saw this guy once, but it stuck with me forever, and I have some pictures of it. That would be the strange pill head that pulled into the back lot of the house that a bunch of my friends lived at called the Funk House in 2007. I got a picture of the gentleman here. He had covered the entire inside of the car in, I guess he had gotten a hold of a bunch of like old circuit boards and like computer equipment, and it just covered. So I think he thought he was driving a spaceship.
He's like, man, I'm in the future, bro.
Yeah. And then on the dashboard, he's got a stack of 45 records and a dog, I guess, whose head wiggles when the car moves.
You meet people who are like, I'm into counterculture because all of my friends live in shitty apartments and like unlistenable music. And it's like, have you ever like just casually met a guy with the inside of his car lined with circuit boards? You don't know shit about counterculture.
It's like
go to Auburn, bitch.
Yeah. You guys talk shit about him and make fun of him all night, and then he's like leaving the party, and then the car starts to glow, and it just
flies away.
Who's a fool now?
Yeah. Where I'm tweaking, you don't need roads. Yeah, so that's my number 2. And then number 1, absolutely, shout out to my friend Andy. I couldn't get an exact date on it, but I believe it to be either a 1989 or a 1990 Geo Prism. And the thing with this car is that the only way that it would start, Andy kept a golf club in the back seat, and he had taken the rubber off the handle, so it was just like a thin, hollow rod, essentially. And the only way you could get it to start was to have someone sit in the driver's seat and pump the gas and crank the keys while someone was under the hood with the golf club, literally banging the fucking starter, just like ding, 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 like, and not lightly, as hard as you could. Like fucking, it sounded like John Henry was working under the hood. And I have a distinct memory of sitting in the Burger King parking lot with Andy, and he's like, "All right, so you get in," and I had to do this process where I'm like stomping the gas and cranking the thing, and he's just under the hood, just like ding, ding, ding. So I texted him today because I thought it was a Geo Metro, but he confirmed it was a Geo Prism. And I texted Andy today when we got this question, and I was like, if you have any more details. And he says, when I worked at Arby's, some guy's Geo Prism died in the drive-thru. So I went out to help him. I pulled out my golf club from the back seat and I began hitting his starter.
No.
Dude paid me $100 and laughed his ass off driving off in his 1994 Geo Prism. And then this is like the perfect end to a shitty car. The car met its end in the bowling alley parking lot on Opelika Road.
As so many of us did.
I was coming home from a friend's house and overheated right before the red light, and I drifted into that parking lot. That was it. So
Wow.
shout out to Andy, shout out to Raleigh, shout out to Chanel.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so those are my three. What do you got, Kev?
Well, I'm probably just going to, my three are probably just going to be in order the three cars my brother owned before he went into the military. Because my worst car I had was a 94 Nissan Sentra. That wasn't that bad, but it did have a racing stripe on it, which was very cool.
I mean, that's cool.
And then my current car is just kind of a shitty Camry. Like, it's just old. So there's nothing fun to talk about there. But my brother's three cars starting in high school, his first one was a station wagon. Don't remember the brand because it was called the Cat's Tongue Mobile, because of his skate crew called Cat's Tongue, and they were very into Bam Margera at the time, you know? And so there's a lot of spray paint all over it. They put coping on the side so you could, like, grind on the car. And, I mean, he couldn't. His friends that were better could.
Wow.
They smashed out one of the windows and replaced it with cardboard, but they had a big tube sticking out of the cardboard so people in the back seat could scream out the window at people.
Good idea, right?
The look John Michael's giving
This
me right
is-
now.
I just thought we were talking about the shittiest car.
That is like
I'm hearing a car that costs $8,000 clean.
I was gonna say that is like scumbag Hall of Fame.
No, it's absolutely.
What's the
why
pink slip
wouldn't
say?
Why wouldn't you just leave the fucking window out?
You know what it looked like? It looked like if
why add the extra step?
Because of whimsy.
well, look, I'll tell you what.
Live, Riv.
It's
That
like
tube is talking to me.
Obviously, they were high and like it'll be awesome. And then
look,
That's
it's
incredible.
the
It
car
probably
looked
started
like,
for like water balloons or something, and then they realized physics was not on the side.
So they just used it for yelling.
the car. The
why
car,
did they bust the window out? Why didn't they just
because
roll
they
it down?
went to Pimp My Ride when it was hosted by Shaggy Two Dope from my Insane Clown Posse. That is the vibe that it gives off. It's like
Yeah.
white trash exhibit,
Pimp My
like
Ride,
West
yeah.
Coast customs, but like West Coast travesties.
Yo, I heard you need to scream at people on the street all the time.
Yo, I
hooked you the fuck up.
I
with
heard
this
you need
tube.
lots of dents for no reason because you think it's funny to hit your car with hammers. And another story about that car is that some other kid in high school at the time spray painted the him logo, the heartogram.
Yeah, of course.
And like Brad was like, my brother Brad and his friends were like, he's stealing our thing. Let's run into that car in the parking lot.
Wow.
So yeah, he's an asshole. And he votes Republican now. But
Hell yeah, bro.
military, you know. His next car was called the Traveler. And it was aforementioned because it was a big shitty van.
It's also a dildo.
How do you become a Republican after spending so much time in a Dark Tower novel?
Oorah.
The joke specifically for Rivers and no one else.
he had the Traveler. He bought it for like $200. And my favorite thing, it's just a big shitty hippie van, you know, with like a couch in it that's not secured to anything. But my favorite
When
thing
it slides.
Oh yeah. But my favorite thing about that car is just the fact that, like, you know, you get a shitty car, you expect it to break down and stuff. He's the only person I've known in my life whose wheel has just fallen off while he's driving.
that happened to me.
It's just really funny to me. Like, it didn't pop, it didn't get shredded. It just, they're like coming in the mountains and he's just like, my wheel, like, I don't know, fell off.
Yeah, that happened to
That's
me.
scary shit.
Yeah. I was just coming to a gentle stop, and then the entire car just lurched suddenly very forward, and I saw my entire wheel just going off into the ditch.
Comically
Yes.
rolling away.
Yeah. Oh, I think I've probably told this before, but when that happened, the tow truck guy that picked me up, a guy I worked with at the pizza place actually was also on sports radio.
Oh, shit.
And he had the radio on, and it was playing. And this guy's name is Will Moon, and the radio's playing, and I hadn't said anything to the tow truck guy, and it was kind of awkward. So finally, I was like, "Oh, sports call. Yeah, it's my buddy. I know him. That's Will Moon." And the tow truck driver, not even looking at me, just staring straight ahead, just goes, "Yep, that's him, Will Moon." And then that was the only thing
That's
that said.
ominous as fuck.
So next time I saw Will, I was like, "Hey, if somebody comes up to you with a copy of Catcher in the Rye, you might want to run."
you gotta keep an eye out for
Yeah.
sideburns.
That guy does not agree with your take on the 2008 Auburn Tigers basketball team.
That's the guy. That's the guy. He's got a list stapled
Yeah.
to the ceiling.
That's the guy who's talking shit about the baseball team.
And then the third one, just I don't remember many specifics about my brother's third car, but it was a shitty Blazer, like an old like early '90s Blazer or
Ooh.
something like that. And all I remember about it was that he had to start it with a screwdriver because he lost the key. So he's just going around with a fucking screw, like meeting my parents for dinner, like oh, I'm going to work. It was psychotic. So those are my three.
John Michael, what do you got?
Number one, my first car was a 96 bright red Ford Aerostar minivan.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck yeah.
That my dad because we did a lot of road trips, had spent considerable money for the 90s installing a 6-disc changer in.
Oh, hell yeah.
So I had the worst and best car. And I played drums, so I always had like one of the seats pulled out so I could like transport them places. And my parents didn't think I had enough game for that to ever be a conversation.
Yeah.
Which was very frustrating. It was a great car, except my dad never explained brake pads to me. So one night while at like a church youth event out in like a distant suburb in like Chattanooga, Tennessee, which was probably like 30 minutes from my house. It's just like a really hilly suburb in the South, driving a girl home and then to my house, probably like a 40-minute round trip thing. I couldn't figure out why my brakes suddenly weren't working. But
We start grinding metal on metal.
yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah, that's terrifying.
And my first thought was not, you should stop and get help. My first thought is, you need to learn to drive a car.
Yeah.
So I drove the 15 miles home, including time on the interstate, using the emergency brake to slow down
Oh, shit.
at like 16.
You're just like drifting.
It's insane. I'd be like, all right, I'm going to drive. The speed limit's 65. I'm going to go like 55.
Oh my god.
And then I'm just going to really start taking off the gas when I get down. And then I
Yeah.
forgot that the off ramp was a down, like a hill.
Oh god. And so when you even lightly touch the brake, it's like
Dude.
yeah.
And then I did finally get home safe, which is a miracle. And then I parked out front, and then my folks yelled at me for parking out front. They were like, "Why did you park out front?" And I told them about it. And they're like, "Why the hell did you drive home?" And they said, "You told me if there was anything I could handle with the car, I needed to handle it."
Yeah.
So anyway.
I literally handled it with the handle of the emergency brake.
So yeah, that the brakes giving out is probably my shittiest. One of my friends in high school had a pickup truck, and I was playing foot drums. Like we were listening to Slayer, and I was doing double bass with my feet.
Yeah.
On the floorboard. And he was like, "Oh yeah, don't do that." And I was like, "Why?" And he's like, "Under the floor mat is a board." He just nailed a board, but there was a hole in the bottom. Like, I was like, the seat could fall through at any moment.
There's one plank.
And he was like, "Yeah, just don't do the Angel of Death double bass."
Yeah. Do the Flintstones song.
exactly. That's a yabba dabba don't.
Yeah.
And then at one point, I had a 98 Honda Accord that was my baby, and I loved it. But it had a heat issue that it caused my radiator to explode while I was driving Josh Wolf from a hotel to the Improv. And I had to be like, "Hey man, I promise we're going to get there before showtime, but I've got to go 10 miles an hour. Because if I go above that, my car kind of explodes." And at no point did it occur to me to just tell them to get him a taxi.
Yeah.
Because when I called them and told them about it, they were like, "Well, you better leave early so you're not late." Like, at no point did they suggest getting a taxi.
Right.
And then I did the show, and then the next night they were like, "Hey, we found someone else to drive Josh. Don't worry about it." And I was like, "Cool, so I'm still doing my spot?" They're like, "Absolutely not." So I was in a car so bad that it had a headliner request me not to host.
It got you kicked off
You
a
got
show.
bumped.
My
Your
car got me
bumped
bumped.
you.
It's a bumper car.
I think watching your host have a nervous fucking breakdown as steam pours out of the hood,
Everything's fine.
driving in Buckhead in Atlanta.
I was told to do your time.
It's all these like fast SUVs driven by tiny women,
Yeah.
like on your ass constantly.
Yeah.
Buckhead is a nightmare.
It's Karenville, USA. Yes.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And we pulled.
It's just issuing
I pulled up to-
billowing smoke.
I pulled up to the valet with like water dripping off the bottom and like smoke still coming out, and I was just like, "Hey, we'll talk about this later." Park it closed. Just
Like, I can't believe that the citizens of Buckhead didn't call the cops on you. Like, hey, there's a man driving a bomb down the street.
it was like
What venue was this?
it was the
Improv.
Improv or downtown Atlanta, but it was like, you fucking get a taxi. Let me hope. I obviously need the $50.
Yeah, at least. Yeah.
You're like, no, I don't need. I'm doing fine. Everything's good.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Probably, probably that I played it cool.
Yeah. I'm doing 10 on this show. 10 miles per hour. Joe, what do you got?
I've gotten a lot of like good cars, and then I've just absolutely degraded them to the worst car.
Well, you've had the one that exploded, famously.
It didn't just explode.
Or it was lit on fire.
It was lit on fire.
Yes,
I
yes.
guess after the fire, that would be
Yeah.
the worst one. I guess.
That's not how you use a Nas tank, Joe.
Yeah, no. I'd say I had a Civic where I had from various drunken bullshits. Like there was like a huge streak down the side. Because one time I was like crazy shit faced and was like, guardrail, let's see what happens. Boom.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah. It's a special kind of drunk.
You're just like, which Motley Crue album do I want to relive?
Generation Swine. For
And then
sure.
like the front hood, my sister had backed into it. Like you do, and then like the driver's side door handle was missing, so you had to like grab a shard of plastic and like lift it up to get the door to open.
That's incredible.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and then like I don't know what had happened before, or maybe I'd done it, but like it like pulled real bad as well. So it was an absolute disaster. That would be the least of the worst, I guess. My sister had a Saturn.
Okay,
It
yeah.
was like a 90-something Saturn, and nothing was power on it. No power steering, no power brakes, no. It was a stick.
No power steering.
Like no, like when
It was like the wheel of a ship.
like literally when she had to turn.
Sails up, boy.
She would like have to lift her whole body out of the seat to like turn the car. So she'd just be like throwing her whole body in to turn the car.
Singing.
Well, I've had my power steering go out, and I know how aggressively difficult that is to do.
yeah.
The lining and the entirety of the car, the lining came loose.
Oh, I love that where you got the
like-
yellow shit in your hair.
Well, no, like it was like fabric that would just hang down, so it'd just be like on your head. Like
Oh, okay.
Not the foam itself.
No, just the fabric,
Ugh.
and then the seats were all loose, so you're like constantly sliding all over the
Just
seat.
constantly fucking up your part.
Yeah, just all over the place. And of course, the windows didn't go down. Even they were manual, but they just didn't go down. And then,
Why
like,
would
the
they?
air conditioner didn't work? Of course, so it was just this insane
It's just a hot box.
Sounds like a Saw movie.
I was
It
gonna say.
was real crazy. Real
would've-
proud of the way she like. Literally, she's one of the few bootstrap stories. She was, it was real bad for her, and then she was like, "You know what? I'm gonna go back to college," and then like fixed it.
A car so bad you go back to
that
college.
Saturn was, it was a lot. I don't really know of any other ones. Those are two.
Okay.
Worst, but,
Well, you did make me think of an honorable mention. I just want to quickly mention
Sure.
real fast. We were talking about bad upholstery, and when I lived in the Bay where it was raining a lot, my Sentra had a real bad leak in the roof in the back, and it got so damp and disgusting back there that life started to grow.
Oh no.
A plant was growing, not a mushroom, a little plant. And I didn't know until I had a friend get the backseat of my car. I was like, "Oh, it's a little like wet on the floor because there's this leak, and I haven't fixed it." He goes, "There's like a fucking tree back here."
Your car is so gross it can get roots.
I mean, it was like a tiny little weed, but like it was life pushing through the cracks.
There's like two of those like birds of paradise doing the mating dance at each other in the back.
David Attenborough narrated over my car.
You accidentally made the album like a new metal album cover, just like a tree sprouting in the back of a Camry.
Absolutely. And I remember that was a particular low point for me. I can't believe I forgot about that. Even think, oh damn.
Man.